Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. We're very excited to have Charlie Davison of Todd Eckenrode Origin Golf Designs with us this morning. We're also being joined by Andy Frank, Senior Designer for Origin. Charlie is the CEO, CFO of Origin Golf Designs. He's also the co-founder of the company. Charlie is responsible for the general and administrative operations, negotiations, execution of contracts of the firm, sales and marketing of Golf Designs. He also is a past member of the SCGA Board of Directors. And joining him this morning also is Andy Frank, Senior Golf Course Designer. Andy comes to Origin Golf Designs by way of George Golf Designs. Andy comes to Origin Golf Designs by way of George Golf Designs in Richmond, Virginia. He's done design work for the Cavalier Golf and Yacht Club there, Country Club of Virginia, and also the White Course at the Greenbrier. Good morning, Mr. Davison. Good morning, Andy. Thanks for joining us this morning on the Catalyst webinar series.
Good morning, John. Thank you very much for having us. We're delighted to be able to share some of our thoughts on these two subjects. I'm sure that the audience has a fair knowledge of long-range master plans and what they mean to golf courses. We're going to go into a little more detail today on why and how and what the process is. And we're going to be touching a little bit on drought planning as well, which probably is more important to us today, even than the long-range master plans. But the thing that's really critical is that we incorporate our drought planning into long-range master plans so that we're not going two directions, spending twice the money that we would if we tried to do them independently. You know, we sort of feel that one sign of a well-run golf course is having a long-term master plan. Having it in place to anticipate improvements needed to stay current in the marketplace, and where and how to invest wisely to meet the course's long-term goals. And mostly, and very important really, is that we want to prevent individual projects from happening that are totally out of context with either the current or future character of the golf course. This just happens all too often. We're going to talk about a little bit more about that later. Unfortunately, some clubs don't recognize a pattern of declining interest in their courses early enough, making it really difficult to catch up. Unlike buildings where shifting foundations or leaky roofs are painfully obvious, golf course problems often are overlooked. Some think they're sort of a natural thing and they take care of themselves. They don't. Most of you know that. Clubs that have invested substantial amounts of money in the past may mistakenly believe that the course is set for life. Guys, I got news for you, and gals, excuse me, Nikki. That really isn't the case. And in many cases, unfortunately, the superintendent is masking the underlying problems by keeping existing course in such great shape. We're really happy for them to do that, but they're overlooking some things. So if you don't have a long-range master plan, the time to start one is now, particularly in light of the imminent importance of commencing with a drought plan, which can be integral to the long-range master plan. The long-range master plan is really more than a great idea. Cosmetic and replayability upgrades may already be necessary if your tee sheets and membership lists aren't full, if you can't raise dues or fees, if you can't attract new members or players, and if your players are hearing comments like, hey, this course was great in its heyday, a long-range master plan also is overdue if the superintendent is spending more time fixing the course rather than maintaining the course. So let's talk a little bit about, hold on a second here. Long-range golf course master plans. I ran across something the other day that I thought was really poignant. If you don't know where you're going, you're sure to get there. And you know what? Where we get isn't necessarily where we're going to want to be, I'm sure. So let's talk a bit about why golf course long-range master plans. So we'll drill down into that a little bit more than we had talked about earlier. Every project that you guys do on your golf courses, whether it's a large project or a small project, should be compatible with a long-range master plan. I can't tell you how many times we'll go into a golf course. They've done some cart path work, they've done some bunker work, they've done some green work, and it really isn't in context with what the whole character of a golf course is. It's a problem, and it will end up costing more money later to fix that. The long-range plan becomes a roadmap for all future golf course projects. You know, we changed superintendents, we changed green committees, we changed presidents, members, owners, and everybody has their own idea about what they want to do. Well, the problem with this is that although, and I think you can all identify with this, every green committee or every superintendent is going to look at this in a different way. And it's amazing on the green committees how they're always filled with golf course designers, arborists, agronomists, and they just really feel like they can make these decisions, but they don't fall within something that's going to work in the long term. Both private and public golf courses must remain competitive. Right now, we're in a really bullish section. It's amazing how something as bad as COVID has been so good for the golf industry, but it has. And I know particularly public courses, it's really tough to get on now. It's tough to get tee time. So we're thinking about, you know, do we really have to worry about being competitive? Yeah, we do. It isn't going to be like this forever. And in terms of private golf courses, I can't tell you how many times we've gone into clubs where they've got a waiting list to sell. They do their renovation or restoration, and it's amazing. But that waiting list to sell turns into a waiting list of people that want to buy memberships and get into the club. One of the other things that we're going to talk about in more detail later is component end of life factors. They should all be done within the context of this long-range master plan. As infrastructure deteriorates, changes must be made to continue to be viable and sustainable. Most of us know that. We don't necessarily think about putting them all together. Advancement in new technology and maintenance must be integrated harmoniously with what we're going to be doing in the future. There are some courses, as we do these master plans, they do them all at one time. Some phase them. Well, if they're phasing their renovation plans over a period of time, we've got to be really careful that every project that we do falls into that whole creative plan. Ongoing economic challenges facing the game require creative ideas to reduce expenses by focusing on main playing areas, but they must be made in context with an overall plan. Have you heard me say that before today? Yeah, probably so. And you're probably going to hear me say it again several times before we're through. A current trend, I just read it and see it all the time, is to make golf courses more fun and user-friendly. Is yours? Hopefully, when we get into long-range master plans or you get into long-range master plans, you're going to be able to keep that in mind. So what is a long-range master plan? A definitive renovation, restoration, or improvement, hole-by-hole analysis, covering all aspects of the golf course, illustrating a comprehensive list of suggested enhancements, maintenance issues, life cycles, and today, really important, the inclusion of a drought and turf reduction plan. Several years ago, when we went through another drought period, as most of you know, there were a lot of turf reduction projects going along, and as a matter of fact, local and state governments were giving refunds and covering a lot of this turf work. We may see that come up again, but we're finding that even projects where we had done turf reduction, say 5 years ago, we're being pressed now to find even more areas in which we can do turf reduction. You know, it's interesting, but historically, we have sort of designed thinking that we want to match what was then the Arizona benchmark for turf, which was like about 95 acres. We did a project down in San Diego for the Barone Indians, which was over 200 acres. And we had on that 200 acres, 95 acres of turf. Most of you probably played the golf course, and it was extremely playable in that area. We are being pressed now to get down as low as 65 acres, keeping the strategy and aesthetics of the golf courses. So it's really a very real problem. The long range master plan creates a buffer that will assist in preventing one-time improvements out of context with the rest of the golf course. In essence, as we had mentioned above, it becomes the roadmap for all future superintendents, green committees, and owners when considering these improvement projects. It also becomes, and this is really sort of critical, a component of selling the members or the owners, well, let's say the members on a project if a private club, or the owners of a semi-private or public club. You know, there's probably very few of us that are on this call today that don't get it. I mean, we all get it. We understand what's important. When we come to you with suggestions about how you can improve your golf course, you guys all get it. But it's really difficult for members of a club or committees for semi-private or public clubs to understand what we're trying to say and where we're trying to go. What's the process? Once a facility has decided they want to consider a long-range master plan, you select a designer, most preferably one with extensive long-range master planning experience, and preferably a member of the American Society of Golf Course Architects. The designer will then tour the facility with a designated committee, which on a private course is usually the green committee, the superintendent, the director of golf, perhaps a member at large, general manager. And this is important for us because we're able to determine areas of improvement that have already been identified by the club. Those obviously are integrated into our long-range master plan. In a non-private situation, it's usually the director of golf, superintendent, and potentially the owner that goes around with us on that first visit to the site. If it's a classic course, which we have done a lot of renovation and restoration on classic courses, an extensive effort is made on historical research. We feel this is really critical, and many of our classic golf clients, golf course clients, want to have a degree of restoration, perhaps not 100% restoration because of all the things that have changed in terms of technology and so on, but they do definitely want to reach back to their roots and have that reflected in what they're going to do in their major remodel or restorations. We'll then secure a recent aerial photograph and a topographic map. We'll determine property lines, locations of existing buildings, trees, rights of ways, easements, and any encroachments, utility information, including existing and planned utility lines, both above and below grade. All of these things being critical to what we're going to be doing. Environmental information, including wetlands and floodplains. And then we'll go in and we're going to be testing natural conditions like soil tests for lakes and subsurface rock. The designer subsequently will make visits to the course many times to develop what we determine is our list of suggested improvements in the areas of strategy, maintenance, new technology, safety, ADA regulations, aesthetics, and probably an area that's really critical to all of you, pace of play. We'll then assemble a schematic with a detailed description showing all areas of identified improvements to be discussed and refined with the client. We'll then take all of that, do a refined plan, convert it into a 1-inch to 100-foot colored illustrative, which is layered over an aerial photograph with details on all suggested improvements. This then becomes the primary tool to convey to the members or the owners the necessity and positive attributes of a renovation restoration project or projects. As the last step in the process, a cost estimate and timeline is developed for the project, either in its entirety or in phases. Many times at this point in the process, the club really doesn't know how much money they're going to be able to raise. They don't know how the members are going to feel about shutting the course down in its entirety or doing this in phases. Doing it in phases, there are a few disadvantages in doing restorations and renovations in phases. Probably the main one is a cost. You know, if you plan to do, say, 3 phases over the next 6 years, you're going to do the first phase today, it's going to cost X. You're going to do the next phase a couple of years from now. You're having to bring the contractor back in again. He's having to remobilize, and more than likely, the cost of materials are going to go up. So it's really best if you can do a renovation or restoration off of the master plan all at one time. And this doesn't necessarily mean shutting the whole course down. We can do this phasing it in one section, 3 holes at a time, 6 holes at a time, and keep the course open for the members or the public. Then also in the cost estimate thing, we'll end up doing usually a lot of value engineering. We go out and we bid the project for the clubs. We'll get usually three estimates from reputable golf course contractors, and sometimes we take the low bid. Sometimes the client doesn't want to take the low bid, but whatever it is, more times than not, we'll go back in with them and help them value engineer to see what can be done to lower that. And then finally, it is usually the process for the club to hold a town hall meeting for the designer to come in and present the attributes and benefits of the plan of the membership. And after that, there will be a vote to proceed. Public courses, it's really a little bit easier. It's not so formal or semi-private courses, and it can be done in a lot faster timeline than we can in private clubs. Those of you that are in private clubs have probably seen this happen, but many times we'll go in for a town hall meeting and we'll present, and the membership turns it down. The next year they'll come back and they'll have thought about it a while, and the membership will pass it. And that's fine. We get that. And we certainly understand it. What we'd like to do now is show you a few examples of long-range master plans and how we approach them. In this particular plan, this course, for those of you that may recognize it, is La Jolla. And what we had done, let me enlarge this just a little bit here. As you'll see, here's a result of our site visit notes, where we've gone around and we have looked at every single item on this golf course, from cart paths to fairway lines, to greens, to green surrounds, to bunkers, to swales, to lakes, to irrigation. Really, basically every single element of a golf course we have looked at. And as you can see, when we've come back on the long-range master plan, we took a copious amount of notes to help describe to the committees and to the members or the owners of the project exactly what we think should be done. I would have to say that in few cases do they just come back and say carte blanche, okay, this is what we want to do. But it absolutely gives them this roadmap we've been talking about to go in and cherry pick different pieces of this master plan that they want to accomplish. And in this particular case, we've thrown in some images that just really sort of help the members to get excited and have warm, fuzzy feelings about what all is going to be going on in their golf course. And an interesting thing that happens, you do a long-range master plan, you are always going to have detractors to that long-range master plan. In 21 years of our doing this business, I don't think we've ever done a project where we've gone in And 100% of the stakeholders in the project have thought it was just the greatest thing since peanut butter. It just doesn't happen that way. But you know what's funny? Many times after you've instituted the things that were on the long range master plan, you've done your renovation or your restoration, the people that were the biggest detractors are the ones that are saying, hey, you've got to come and look at the great things that have happened on this golf course. Just sort of human nature, I guess. Here's a little bit of a different kind of an approach that we took for this project. This is one where there wasn't as much historical data that we were concerned about here. It was more one where the committee felt that it was important that we convey to the members what this is probably going to look like when it's all done. Again, as I mentioned before, we all get it. We can picture this stuff. The members or the stakeholders in semi-private or public courses just have a difficult time getting this. So what we'll do is we'll do simulations. We'll throw in befores and afters. We're going to later on in the presentation, we're going to show you some more examples of before and after. But it contains all of the same elements that we had before, where we take all of the notes of the things that we thought were important to improve the golf course. And as you know, as you can note here, they're really detailed items. So we don't leave anything hanging out there, so that it isn't very clear as to what we think is going to be important. Another very much similar kind of thing where here they wanted befores and afters. On this particular plan, one of the things that sort of leads into what we're going to be talking about later, in addition to all of the, and this is sort of cool because you can read some of the notes that we made on here. I'll leave this up for a few minutes so you can sort of look at that. But if you'll notice the shaded tan areas on this plan, this was at a time a few years ago when we were in drought conditions again, and we had thrown in our plan for turf reduction areas. And I don't remember, Andy, you remember how much turf we took out of this project?
That's a good question. I don't remember how much we ended up with removing.
But we have the ability, of course, to take each one of those areas, and in CAD, we will determine how much is in that area, and we can come back with a definitive amount of turf reduction. And later on, we're going to be talking about how we can actually take those definitive numbers and turn those into what it's going to take, what it's going to save in water and an annual cost for that particular area. So that's another reason why now, when we're doing this whole long range master plan, let's make sure that we get a drought plan in there at the same time, rather than going back, reproducing a base map, reproducing topography. We can do this all as an integral thing, and it will definitely save money. Now I thought maybe we just give you a few examples of some photo simulation. Photo simulation it is not inexpensive, but it many times is a critical nature on getting projects improved. Again, the stakeholders, the members have a hard time seeing what we're trying to do. So this is a big help for that. Andy, you might want to step in and talk a little bit about some of these before and after things that we're showing.
Sure, yeah, this one was, I think we were probably trying to express a little bit of how it's going to look like with tree removal. That's usually a super controversial topic. You know, often if we can say it's for agronomic reasons, they're happy to remove trees. In this instance, we're trying to open up some of these long views that you get out here in the Burbank area. That huge stone pine you see in the back has since been removed. We we fought to get that one out for a long time, and we finally got that out. And this one also shows these bunkers were probably at this point 30 years old, and there was a lot of buildup, as you can see on that right bunker in the before picture. We kind of lowered that lip, and then this also shows what we do a lot of is we do green expansions, where we'll take a corner of the green that's grown in over the years and push it out 10 feet, 12 feet to get a new pin location. In this case, kind of tucked behind that right bunker, you can see we put the flag back over there to kind of show that you now have, where they didn't have before, a cool pin location tucked in that back right location.
Now, this I believe was Sataquai Country Club, wasn't it, Andy?
Yes.
And here they wanted a very a simple simulation to show the members. They wanted to get rid of that lake or little pond that was sitting out there. And it's amazing how, again, they felt this was something that we needed to do to get the members to buy in to what they had planned to do there.
And
Andy,
here
this was Lakeside as well, right?
Yeah, this is Lakeside. This was just showing, this thing was kind of a hourglass green, really pinched in the middle, and we were just showing, kind of straightening out that back edge and pushing out the back left to, again, without really changing too much, getting some really interesting pin locations and giving the superintendent the ability to move the pin around a little more and distribute that wear.
This is really a great, for those of you that have played Lakeside. Number 15 has always been a great hole. This is as most of you know, as just a max bear gym. 2 greens. They have the primary green right here, which I don't know, Andy, isn't that ranges anywhere between 100 and 110 yards, yeah, just a short 3-par. And this one is probably what, 150, 160.
Yeah, at least,
as I recall, as an alternate green. And they're both really great green complexes. But for some reason, someday, someone decided that they were going to plant a pine tree out here. And at the time, as I recall, it was really just a sort of a small postage stamp green over here to the right. And we went back and looked at a lot of the original pictures of and concepts of what this hole was all about. And we're able to come back and make this probably one of the great short 3-pars of all. As we look at this now, this is just a really wide green, extremely narrow, drops off sharply on the back, and it drops off sharply on the front. So it just makes an outstanding hole now. But again, trees are an issue. It's always difficult when we talk to members, particularly about removing trees. But once they saw what could happen to this hole, it was a total buy-in. Want to talk about this a little, Andy?
This is again just kind of showing we're getting this foreground bunker in, and it doesn't even look like we were showing it. I think it was more these foreground bunkers that we often are the first ones on a historical golf course that, if it was built in the 20s and 30s, they got up into the 50s and 60s, and to save on maintenance costs, some of these more interesting bunkers end up getting filled in. And this was probably an example of us showing, the landform was kind of still there. You can see that ridge in the existing one. And this is just giving them an idea of what it would look like to kind of reestablish some of the older features that their golf course once had. And, similar here, just the bunkers were there. And this is another case where, you get this huge sand buildup on that right bunker. the green ends up, because of it, the pinnable area ends up shrinking considerably, where, it was a 2 or 3% slope, and all of a sudden you've got a 10% slope because that bunker lip is 2 feet higher. And, we can come in there and clean those bunkers up, and, they're relatively in the same spot, but they're back to their kind of original shape and contours and depth. And yeah, this is another case where we're kind of establishing some of the historical bunkering. The look is certainly different. Some clubs, the bunkers look almost identical. A lot of clubs, after edging and mowing and weed whacking them, the shapes and the details kind of go away. So not only do we hunt for the old locations of the bunkers, but we kind of try and establish a style that was there originally. And back to La Jolla. This one was interesting. I don't think we had a great picture. This was, in its day, it was a drivable 4, but they planted so many trees down the left side, you really couldn't even see the green anymore. So this was a combination of reestablishing the green locations a little bit. We found out that ridge was a ridge because it was a huge rock, so we couldn't slide the green quite as far as we wanted to, but kind of put that bunkering back in and cleared a lot of trees down the left side to not only get the long ocean view that you didn't have anymore, but also when you stood on that tee, you could see the green and you could have a think about going for it. And this was the next hole at La Jolla, reestablishing some of it's not just the bunkers, but it's the landforms too that end up kind of losing their glory. And we took this hole, it's the hole you hit down into the canyon on. It's got those really cool 2 holes that play through the bottom of that canyon. And again, this was almost a pure restoration of this hole. It had one bunker stuck kind of right in the middle of the green, and it had a really cool grass swale going through it. And we just kind of put everything back the way it was originally.
Thanks, Andy. So just some of the lessons that have been learned over the years. If you have extra property, ancillary property, unused land, it really many times will prove invaluable to keep that land for something that you're going to be doing in the future. This, of course, isn't always the case. Take a club like Mission Viejo Country Club that had a few acres of land adjacent to their golf course. They were able to sell that land off to a developer, and they made enough money on that land to build a brand new clubhouse. So that isn't always the case, but many times it is really more appropriate to try and hold on to the extra land that you have for some future use. For example, in private clubs, whether now all of a sudden, as we know, pickleball is something that clubs are starting to develop, and maybe you might want to go to tennis or swimming pools or bocce courts or whatever that you want to do in the future. You don't know what's going to happen. In selecting an architect, choose the one that'll maximize a unique site-specific identity of your golf course. Take a really close look at their portfolio, what they've done, how much work they've done that resembles what the character of your golf course is. And then, of course, always call references. Successful renovation project requires strong, bold leadership from club leaders. And this doesn't matter whether it's a private club or a semi-private club or a public facility. You've got to have those that are running the project 100% behind you and have the ability to really get up and help you sell this project. When doing a restoration, we'll always pick a date from the heyday of the club's history and focus on recapturing those design elements. Andy just went over a bunch of those as we were showing you some of the samples that we did there. And on restorations, that obviously is key. Make sure the superintendent, the golf staff, club manager, are all in sync on communications, providing members with playing options and being realistic about reopening dates. You know, it's sort of like, I think something I learned many years ago with my wife. Instead of telling her that I was going to be home at 5 o'clock and I'd get home at 6 o'clock, that never really worked very well. So I finally, after many years, found out that, you know, why don't I tell her that I'm going to be home at 7 o'clock? Then I'm going to get home at 6 o'clock and I'm going to be a hero. We can use that same that same plan when we're thinking about reopening dates and about what's going to happen, because members will hold you to those dates. And you can hear a lot of things about big problems if those dates are not met. And then knowing that after completion of the project, additional tweaking will be needed. You know, golf courses are sort of a living, breathing thing, far different than building a building. And we'll most times need to come in when things are all over for the next few years, perhaps, and look how things are growing in, look how things are changing, look how they're playing, look how maintenance is being handled on those areas, and make some tweaks. And we're certainly happy to do that. The other thing I think that's really important is that when you're selecting an architect that is going to do this project for you, it's quite important that he has a good reputation in the industry and he's able to get the attention of media so that he can go in and he can get your golf course improvements recognized. So not only are they recognized internally, but they're recognized externally as well. We're going to run through this sort of quickly because I know, John, you'd like to save, say, 15 minutes for questions.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay, fine. And we'll sort of run through this, but we're all pretty much familiar with golf life cycle planning. But here's some of the things how golf has changed. We know design has changed. Technology in golfer equipment, maintenance equipment has changed. Technology has improved dramatically. The golfer profile, construction materials, techniques, expectations, competition. Everybody is trying to raise the bar on the quality of their golf courses, particularly important on private courses. As I mentioned before, it seems, and you guys can back me up on this, but it seems like public courses right now are just really doing great. I see fees going up dramatically on public golf courses and a difficulty going on in times. So for those of you that haven't seen this before, it's sort of interesting, but you know, who thinks about bunker sand going out? Well, bunker sand does have a life. It depends on the sand. It depends on the time, on the amount of play, depends on where it is in terms of moisture that hits it and whatever. Irrigation systems, we all know need replacing over a certain period of time. Cart paths, practice range tees, corrugated metal pipes, bunker drainage, mulch, and so on. All of these things have a definitive life and need to be considered in your long-range master plan. This was sort of an interesting thing that I came across. The American Society of Golf Course Architects had done a study. Look at 1925. The slopes around the cup were 6 to 8%. Look how that has, those would be really tough greens to putt, I'm sure. Look how that has changed today. They're down to a maximum of, say, 2.2 to 2.5%, which is what they are today. And notice the note at the bottom. Based on stent meter reading, approaching 12 to 14 feet in tournament conditions today, in 1976, which wasn't that long ago, the average stent meter reading on all PGA Tour courses was 7.6 feet. Well, if your greens haven't had any attention, say for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they're going to reflect some of these slopes, and they definitely need attention. So despite the cost at stake, people too often wait for golf course components to wear out rather than planning ahead. In reality, it is possible to plan and budget for necessary improvements that maintain quality playing conditions and healthy turf. It can all be done through your long-range master plans. So let's be proactive, not reactive. I'm skipped through this because we're running a little bit short here, but let's talk, we want to spend a few minutes on drought planning. We all know that we're entering into a phase right now that is probably a little more critical than any of us would like to hear. Our phone is ringing more now from golf courses, clubs, public courses saying, you know, what can we do to do some drought planning? And there's really a fair amount of things that we can do to help them do that. One of the things that is really important, many of you are familiar with CAG and the California Alliance for Golf, and they're doing an incredibly good job, along with Craig Kessler and his team from the SCGA Government Affairs, in terms of spending a lot of time in Sacramento, not only on legislation, but on letting them know that golf courses are not the problem. And I'm not going to go through all of this because we're short on time, but this is all available to any of you that would like it later. But I think it's really important that we spend some time finding all of the things that golf has done in the last 20 years in terms of being proactive, you know, friendly drought tolerant species, soil moisture median, reduce or curtail overseeding. That's a tough one for those of you in the desert, I know. Implementation of on-site treatment plants, which we've got several examples of, collaborative partnerships with water providers, public utilities. These are all things that the golf industry has done over the last 20 years. And it's really important for all of us to be apostles for this and really letting the public know that golf is not the problem. Because we are, no question about it, our industry is a target. So action items, we can't be shy about vocalizing golf industry's proactive steps. We must support CAG both financially and in our collective action. We cannot procrastinate on our own facilities to initiate drought planning because it's here. It isn't something that's going to be coming. Drought planning must be an integral part of the long-range master plan so that you're not doing piecemeal things. And be mindful that this may not be a short-term problem, this drought. We don't know. If long-term and we're not proactive, the results really can be catastrophic. Just some of the things that we look at here real quickly in terms of drought plan approaches. Knowledge of the golf course acreage, size of greens, teeing grounds, so on and so forth. All of the things that we look at in a long-range master plan. We really try to understand monthly water use, irrigation systems, and we work always hand in hand with highly qualified irrigation consultants. They are mandatory. The superintendents are fabulous resources, but you've got to have an irrigation consultant on board as well. Just a few quick things that some people have done in terms of drought reduction. This is a project up at Pelican Hill. Imagine 2007, long time ago. This was to capture water runoff. And they were thinking of this already, restoring their underground drainage system. This would happen to be El Miguel, putting in some new irrigation with very high-tech moisture sensing equipment. A project up Sharon Heights Country Club. This is fabulous. They worked out a public-private partnership to put on a water treatment plant, a satellite treatment plant at their property, cost of $22,595,000, of which all was paid by the state out of two different funds. So public-private partnerships are something that we can be considering if we want to look at water treatment plants. And then as we're figuring out how much water can be saved and working with the irrigation consultant, there are definitive percentages of how much water is used for green complexes, teeing grounds, fairways, primary rough, secondary rough. So this isn't just something that we do by the seat of our pants. We're really able to be definitive on all of these things. Some examples of turf reduction. Turf reduction does not have to be unplayable. It does not have to reduce strategy. It does not have to reduce aesthetics. It can be beautiful and it can be playable. And there's a lot of turf reduction we've done over the last several years the members are delighted with. Diablo, California, we just finished a major renovation up at Diablo. They are also looking at putting on their own mini sewage plant for recycled water. It's going to cost the members $6 to $10 million. They're paying for it. Members are on board because they know that within 10 to 15 years, They are not only going to have a guaranteed supply of water, they're going to get their money back. With this plant delivering 500,000 gallons of water a day, they're going to be able to sell 2/3 of the water that they produce back to the community. So it isn't necessarily all about public-private partnerships, but this project in this particular case is all about environmental responsibility and being a good citizen and having a sustainable project. So a drought emergency plan will help you make targeted water reductions while focusing limited water where it is needed most. However, for the greatest benefit, it must be integrated with a long-range master plan. I'm sure you're really tired of hearing me say that today, but it is critical. So this is not the end, it's just the beginning. So I'd love to entertain any questions, unless you're all asleep, you know.
No, of course not. Are you kidding? This is renovating that. We all think that renovating our golf courses is the ultimate answer to opening up the doors for driving more revenue, driving more rounds. And we always want to make our properties what they should be. But definitely, first of all, Charlie, Andy, on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, thank you so much for putting together a presentation and coming on and entertaining us and educating us this morning. We love having you on. But yes, definitely some questions that have come in. When talking about, you get presented with greens committees or clubs or owners with high hopes or unrealistic concepts, and you having to weigh that balance between what you're putting your name on, but yes, trying to be able to say yes to your client. How often do you find yourself saying, no, we can't do that for these reasons? Or do you kind of just acquiesce and say yes because they're the client and you want to make them happy? How do you balance that, and especially when you're sticking your name on it and the whole
Well,
world?
it's a really good question, and our approach almost always is that we'll go into a project and we're going to tell the owners or the members of this particular project everything that we think needs to be done. And we're going to be pretty strong about the fact that, we sort of know what we're doing. We've done this for a while. But when you get to the bottom line of this, it's not our club. It's not our golf course. So if they really get adamant about doing something or not doing something that we think that they should be doing, we're going to acquiesce to that. The flip side, of course,
you're putting your name on it.
The flip side, and that is the flip side, because if it's something that is going to be really detrimental and it's going to just be something that we absolutely do not agree with, well, maybe we've got to walk away from the project.
Has that happened?
No, because our ideas are always so great. Now, I can't think honestly of a time when we've had to walk away. I think one of the things is when you go in, you can't be shooting from the hip. You've got to go in with some really sound ideas that have thoughtful planning behind them. And if you do that, very seldom are you going to run into a situation where you've got to walk away.
And when you are tackling a project, what are some of the creative ways that you acquire aerial photography or aerial documentation of golf courses from the past, from the era before drones and before aerial photography? What are some of the creative ways that you've gone about getting?
Well, there are some really great sources that we're able to go to. There are historical libraries that we're able to go to. UCLA has one. And many times private clubs will have historians that have assembled a lot of the details for this, which are a big help to us as well. And then we've got resources, guys like Tommy Naccarato. I don't know if that name is familiar to too many of you, but Tommy Naccarato, who is a writer and one of the great golf historians. Tommy's able to dig stuff up for us sometimes that it just shocks us that we were able not to find. But there are many sources of museums and things. Local newspapers many times are able to go back and they're announcing, say, the opening of a golf course in 1908. And believe it or not, we've been able to dig out newspaper releases, press releases from 1908 talking about the golf course with pictures of the routing and whatever. So there's just a lot of sources that we're able to access to get this historical information. Now, you talked about aerial photos, old aerial photos. Sometimes we can find them, sometimes we can't. Currently, as long as we're talking about aerial photos, historically, if you wanted to get a current aerial photo of your golf course, you hire a company that goes up and flies it in an airplane and whatever, takes pictures and gets it back to you in a form that will integrate with your CAD topographic information. Today, drones have become terribly technological, and we're finding that we can drone fly a project for a fraction of the cost that it would take to go up and fly it originally in an airplane.
Now, can you talk a little bit about the most fun projects you've had over the last 5 years?
Fun project. Gosh, we've had, to us, every project is fun, honestly.
What
there
are
are
you,
some
I guess, what are
that
you
are,
most,
there
what
are
are you
some,
most proud of over
I'm
the
sorry?
last half decade or even decade?
Well, probably in terms of new courses, we'll just take 2 new courses and either restorations or renovations, but probably the one that we're most proud of on new courses is the course we did with Freddie Couples in Cabo San Lucas, Twin Dolphin. It was just a wonderful site, a great experience working with Fred. And if any of you have played it, I think you'll agree it's really a wonderful experience in a heavy golf market. In terms of small courses, I think one of the real fun projects we did was the 9-hole 3-par at the Terranea Resort in Palos Verdes. It's got 9 3-pars that are all really fun, ocean view, every single one with an ocean view and a view of Catalina, and the resort is really a nice place as well. But that was one where we had started out. They wanted us to do a full 18 holes, and they sold off a bunch of land, said, we have 35 acres left over. We'd like some sort of a golf amenity. What can you do? Well, look where it is. You can do some really fun things. So that was really good. And I would say probably on, renovations or restorations, they're all just really terrific to come out and see what it's been. And not just us, but it's the members' input, it's the contractors, it's all the people that are involved in it as a team. So I don't think I could pick a favorite. And besides, many of our clients may be online, and I don't want to pick out a favorite.
Right. I was just thinking that. I was like, I shouldn't even ask you that question. Okay, excellent. Well, Andy, Charlie, again, on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, thank you so much for coming on the Catalyst this morning and educating the membership. We do appreciate your time and sharing your expertise. Want to remind all of the membership on the Catalyst this morning to join us on the 16th, September 16th. No Catalyst next week. Next Thursday on the 9th, we'll be reconvening on the 16th with Joe Assell of GolfTec. Based out of Colorado. He's going to be talking about GolfTec as a career path, the #1 employer nationwide for PGA golf professionals. So excited to have Joe on the webcast in a couple of weeks. And Charlie, Andy, thank you very much for your time today, guys. Take care.
Okay,
everybody.
thank you so much for
Appreciate
having me.
it.
It was nice to share with all of you.